Hello, everyone, and welcome to the table. So, I love buying knives from, of all places, Kickstarter. So, Kickstarter is great for crowdfunding those small projects that you're really not going to see many other places, and sometimes you find some real gems. So, this one right here, I think, falls into that latter category. This one is coming to us from a company called Foldedge. And of course, we never heard of them before. It's just a company based out of
China.
and they do sell pocket knives of various types, I'm sure, but this particular one, we can see the specs right here. So it's a Foldedge. The model number is right there. I wish they had a real name to it instead of a model number, but what we have here, we have a D2 steel blade and a titanium handle. So what makes that kind of cool here is that we have this really nice axis lock design, very nice titanium scales on this knife, fully sculpted pocket clip. So it's kind of a very unique look, and at what is a pretty much a budget price. So I know getting in early on a Kickstarter is always the fun part of it. So this knife cost about 50 bucks or 49 bucks essentially. And so we're getting that axis lock locking mechanism. We're getting the titanium handles, D2 steel blade right there with this nice drop point blade on it, stonewash finish. So overall, very impressed with what I picked up for this price. And one of the things about Kickstarter, of course, I don't know if they're still going to sell this knife anymore. So I'm hoping this video is not all for nothing. But this is the Foldedge D2 titanium handled knife. And so taking a closer look at it, of course, it does have that axis lock mechanism. And now they don't go calling it a crossbar lock or some silly other name made up for it. They just say on the Kickstarter, it's an axis lock because, of course, given that this is an overseas-based company, they're not necessarily caring about trademarks. And the real star of the show, of course, what's really going to draw all of us to this knife are these handles. Because again, this is titanium. And for a fairly budget price, you can see it has this kind of cross-hatched pattern to it, which again is fairly unique. Don't see things like that too often done in titanium. So it does give you some of that visual flair. This one would be a great candidate if you wanted to anodize it and, really go wild with the colors. You could probably make it really pop. And so in hand, the cross hatching is not super deep, so it's not giving you a whole lot of grip or roughness to it, but it does give you some of that visual pop, which looks really nice. Also, of course, we can look inside the handles here, and we can see they did mill out some, I don't know if you can see that. It's hard to get on camera. There we go. They did mill out some material from inside of that titanium to try and reduce the weight as much as they could. Got a nice little lanyard hole in the back, so very simple, nothing to complain about there. But we also have a really cool sculpted pocket clip. So again, titanium pocket clip. We can see that it has a nice wide profile on there. And it's not deep carry or anything, but it doesn't really have to be. It carries perfectly fine. And since this cross hatching is not super rough, it goes in and out of pocket really easy. And it's going to be a one position only because, of course, with the sculpted clip, you have to have that little cutout for it. So this is going to be a right-hand side tip up carry, as you can see. Not a super heavy weight knife, coming in 3.4 ounces, so about 3.5 ounces there. And let's compare that weight to something like the Benchmade Bug Out, because we know the Bug Out weighs almost nothing. So right there, the Bug Out, 1.94. And so we'll do a size comparison in just a second as well. But either way, 3.5 ounces is not very heavy for a folding knife, especially something with titanium handles on it. And I don't even want to say titanium scales because the entire handles are just one sculpted piece of titanium, which is really cool. But let's go ahead and pull out a ruler, check out the length of this knife because our blade is coming in very respectable size right here. We can see right about 3.25 inches of blade length, and overall length there is maybe about a little over 7.5 inches long. So very respectable size for, what we would consider everyday carry, so to speak. And so again, one of the things I'd love to see if they continue to sell this model, and if I can find where they're still selling it for y'all out there, I'll toss a link down in the comments. I'll put a link to the Kickstarter, but I don't know if they still sell it. How does that work? After the Kickstarter's over. I think some places will continue to sell through, but I think it's a pretty fair deal for what we get here. $49 titanium. Of course, blade, did I even mention that? This is D2 steel. And so again, for the price, I expect D2 steel. That's pretty respectable for what we're getting right here. So again, straight out of the package, let's go ahead and test the edge real quick. So edge is cutting, so really no issue cutting paper. So decent edge straight out of the package. And that's what we have there. So comparisons, size comparisons. Let's lay this down. And we just had the Bug Out. So let's go ahead and put the Benchmade Bug Out right next to it. And so side by side, you can see pretty darn similar. Maybe the angle of the camera is not helping it, but let's go ahead and put out the Benchmade mini bug out. So right next to it, you can definitely see there's a size difference, size comparison. But for a more accurate, blade to blade comparison, let's hold them like this. And we can see overall our blade dimensions. The bug out's a hair shorter, but really handle length is about the same. So even overall length, not much larger than the Benchmade bug out. A little bit heavier, a little more stout, because of course it's that titanium handle versus plastic. And I think there's a big segment of us out there that would really prefer something more solid and substantial in hand. And so, of course, I bought this knife, and once it arrived, it's in my hands, I'm holding it, I'm feeling it, I can't help but think, this knife feels really familiar. And sure enough, it turns out Foldedge, they kind of borrowed this design, or at least some portions of it, because there is another knife coming out of China, coming out of at least AliExpress land, that is essentially the same model of this knife, different materials and and a pattern, but we can see that right here. So this one right here is the Bearfly. So this one comes to us from Juful, and so they're a brand. I see them on AliExpress all the time. I don't really know what to say beyond their name, and I don't even know if I'm saying it right. Jufule, Juful. But they sell, again, folding knives, and this one is their Bearfly model, same D2 blade. So let's hold these guys side by side. Check out that blade. Those are probably interchangeable. Very, very similar in size. Handles right there. And of course, you can see there's a definite materials difference. These are, steel liners on blue micarta versus the titanium. But it's interesting, right? You can see they took kind of the same pattern and just did some little upgrades, because here we have a basic pocket clip, steel clip, versus the sculpted titanium. But the actual design itself, these two designs are pretty much identical. They just made some cosmetic differences, some materials changes, and boom, new knife. And that being said, this is a Kickstarter. And one of the things about Kickstarter is people purchase it, they throw up comments and suggestions. Hey, do this, change this. People are always demanding things from Kickstarters. And they actually made one tangible change here I think many of you may agree with. So, of course, look at the blade. There are 0 markings on this blade and on this knife in total. There's nothing to identify where it came from. And so in the original campaign, we had a big logo right here that had this Foldedge logo on there, along with a bunch of text like blade steel, this, that. And so people saw that in the campaign and put in the comments like, hey, you need to drop that logo. It's hideous. Please don't include that. And the seller, hey, props to the seller of this knife. They went ahead, they deleted the logo. But for me, I actually don't mind having a logo on the blade or on the knife in general. Because let's imagine a scenario here. You find this knife on the side of the road, no idea where it came from. It's just there, it's beat up, but it's the best knife you ever owned. You love it, you want to buy more. But without any logo or identifying information, you're never going to find where this thing came from. At best, you might, post on Reddit, where's this knife from? And hopefully someone can help you. So I do like having, some kind of a marking. It can be something as simple as, a Benchmade logo or a Kershaw logo, anything of that nature. But having no markings at all, it looks cool, of course. But in a way, I definitely want to remember the origin of this knife 10, 15 years from now. When I find this in a drawer, I'm like, what is that? Where's that from? I want to remember, because not all of us keep the packaging, and remember this and keep it intact. So what are we going to do? So I think there's a balance to be had right there. So knife rant off. Tell me what you think in the comments. Logo or no logo? You tell me. So either way, I just wanted to share my thoughts on the Foldedge D2 titanium folding knife they recently released here on Kickstarter. Really cool knife. Absolutely no flaws, especially at the $49 price point. Titanium D2, pretty well done. So good on them, and I'm glad this Kickstarter managed to deliver. Any questions and comments, drop those below, and I hope you all have a nice day. See you later.